Hey guys, tonight we dive into the sea mist and step barefoot onto a trail of crushed grapes. You're on the edge of an ancient grove where the leaves shiver with something older than wind. And standing there, wine cup in hand, smile just a little too wide. That's Dionysus, the god of wine, madness theater, and several types of social behavior that would get you permanently banned from your HOA. He's the last god to roll into Olympus. Part mystery, part chaos, part fermentation accident. You probably won't survive this, but hey, it'll be a fun ride. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, what's your location and local time? Drop it in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in the sunburnt hills of Thebes, sometime after mortals got tired of inventing gods and started inventing wine instead. In strolls Dionysus, barefoot, grinning, and leaving little purple stains wherever he goes. He's young, beautiful in that confusing ancient way. Long curls, eyes like trouble, and a laugh that sounds like it belongs at 3 in the morning. Nobody's quite sure where he came from, but vines start growing overnight. Cups refill themselves, and suddenly half the town is dancing in circles with their hair undone. See, Greek gods don't just arrive. They make an entrance. And Dionysus, he crashes through the mortal world like a really polite tornado. No lightning bolts, no trumpet blasts, just you, one sip into your goblet, realizing you can taste the stars. Now, some versions of the myth say he's here to punish Thebes for disrespect. Others say he just likes a good party. Historians still argue whether he was imported from Thrace, born in Thebes, or just an old fertility cult, given better lighting and a marketing budget. But here's what nobody debates. When Dionysus shows up, normal goes out the window. He doesn't build temples. He builds moments. You're not supposed to pray. You're supposed to join in. His followers, mostly women, many of whom would have been stuck churning butter or marrying cousins, suddenly get to run wild in the woods, covered in ivy and good decisions. Okay? Questionable decisions. Okay? 0 decisions. They're called maenads, and they're basically Dionysus's backstage crew. And every time you blink, there's music coming from somewhere. Flutes and drums, and that goat skin bagpipe, nobody invited. A guy in a lion pelt dances with a girl holding a thyrsus, basically a wine stick with pine cones, and bad ideas on top. You think you see someone levitate, but it could also just be the wine. The thing is, Dionysus doesn't ask permission. He doesn't knock. He shows up in your dreams, in your backyard, in your cousin's face at a wedding, offering you a sip from a goblet that somehow smells like summer and secrets. And here's where it gets weird. You start hearing whispers that he's not just some grape-loving rando, that he's a god. One of the 12, which, by the way, is a very exclusive club. Most of them have been around since Titans roamed the place. And here comes Dionysus, late to the party. No RSVP, just handing out joy and slightly cursed hangovers. It's no surprise some folks aren't thrilled. Him? They scoff. He's got no lightning, no war, no wisdom. But you know better. You've seen how the air shifts around him, how people weep with joy and terror at the same time. And anyway, what's more divine than the moment right before everything becomes too much? One night, you're pulled into one of his rituals. It's moonlight and torchlight and the rhythmic stomp of feet on dust. No one speaks. There's a silence filled with wine and anticipation. A leopard slinks by, not quite real. You dance until you forget your name. You laugh until your ribs hurt. Then, just as you begin to wonder if this is eternity, he's gone. No flash, no warning. Just a sigh of mist rolling down the valley. A vine with one grape left. And you standing there, barefoot and unsure if it was all a dream. You ask the others, but they just smile. Some say he's on his way to Naxos. Others say he was never here at all. But the grapes in your palm are real, and so is the feeling that something divine passed through, laughing. You wake up with grape juice on your hands and twigs in your hair. Someone's goat is chewing on your tunic. Welcome to life after a Dionysian party. The god himself. Long gone. But the whispering hasn't stopped. Turns out, his origin story is a hot mess, just like his vibe. You're sitting around a low fire now, nursing a cup of water. Finally, listening to the village storyteller, who probably embellishes, but hey, that's half the fun. And tonight's tale? The time Dionysus got born twice. You squint, thinking that sounds medically inadvisable. And you'd be right, because Dionysus didn't just pop out of a mortal womb with jazz hands and a vine. No. First he had to survive being incinerated in the womb of a mortal woman named Semele. Cute, right? Semele had the dubious honor of being Zeus's side fling, and like all of Zeus's love interests, things ended with fire, screaming, and long-term trauma. See, Semele got tricked by Hera, Zeus's goddess, wife/eternal nemesis, into asking Zeus to reveal his true divine form. Bad idea. Ever seen lightning up close? Imagine trying to hug it. She gets vaporized. Poof. Gone, like a bad Snapchat. But Zeus, bless his chaotic heart, grabs the unborn baby from the ashes, and does what any desperate sky god would do. He cuts open his own thigh and shoves the fetus in. Not even joking. Historians still argue whether this story reflects some ancient symbolic rebirth, or if ancient Greeks just had really surreal metaphors. Either way, the kid finishes gestating in Zeus's leg and is born again. Ta-da! As a god. Cue heavenly applause. Dionysus is now the only Olympian with a full body warranty and an origin story stranger than a season finale of any prestige TV show. Twice born. Part mortal, part divine. Fully confusing. You glance around. Someone mutters, "That's why they call him the twice born." Another nods sagely while swatting away a drunken bee. The campfire crackles, and for a moment, you imagine the tiny, divine baby emerging from Zeus's leg like a grape from a split vine. It's disturbing, but also kind of on brand. Now here's where things get even more mythical. Baby Dionysus isn't exactly safe. Hera is still mad, obviously, so Zeus does what any nervous dad might do. He hides the kid. In some versions, he gets sent to be raised by mountain nymphs. In others, by a talking goat. There's a place called Mount Nysa? Maybe in Thrace, maybe in India, maybe just ancient Greece's version of undisclosed location. Wherever it is, it's wild, it's sacred, and it definitely smells like fermented things. So, while the other gods grow up swinging lightning bolts and brooding on mountaintops, Dionysus is growing up with ivy in his hair, learning the secrets of nature, fermentation, and how to charm mortals into embarrassing interpretive dances. Not bad for a kid who started out as a toasted embryo. Time passes. You sip something mildly alcoholic out of a horn, and think about how fitting it is. Dionysus isn't just the god of wine. He is wine. He's transformation. Change. Mood swings in a bottle. One moment you're laughing, the next you're crying at a tree. And that's not madness. That's the point. Because unlike the other gods, who want temples and sacrifices, and maybe a good war now and then, Dionysus wants experience. He wants you to feel something so intense that your identity dissolves, that you become part of the divine. And yeah, sometimes that involves hallucinations, or leopard pelts, or waking up in a stranger's wheat field. But here's the kicker: Dionysus doesn't judge. He's not the god of punishment. He's the god who sees your weirdest, welled aside and says, yes, more of that. Some nights you still hear stories from travelers who claim they saw him wandering, dressed like a mortal. Always beautiful, always odd. Sometimes he's a girl, sometimes a boy, sometimes a vine-covered blur who just offered them a sip and vanished. You pull your cloak tighter. The fire's low. The stars above you look drunk. And you realize something: Dionysus didn't just escape death. He made it irrelevant. He was born again before it was trendy. He redefined godhood not by force, but by vibe. And somewhere out in the hills, you swear you hear laughter. Faint. Playful. a little tipsy. You wake with the sunrise brushing gold across the hills and the unmistakable sense that something's happening. Again. This time, you're not in Thebes, or Mount Nysa, or wherever you ended up after that last dance circle. You're in Phrygia or Lydia, or maybe an island that's not on any map. It smells like olives and storytelling. Word is, Dionysus is on the move. See, the god doesn't sit still. Once he's crowned himself with ivy and tossed back a celebratory vintage, he grabs his staff, his satyrs, and a couple of extremely chaotic goats and hits the road. It's a tour, but make it ancient. Dionysus is here to spread the good word. Fermentation is magic. Parties are sacred. And maybe, just maybe, reality is overrated. He wanders east, into strange lands with stranger customs. Historians still argue whether this mythic road trip reflects actual wine, spreading cultural diffusion, or just the Greeks projecting themselves onto the world like a needy improv troupe. Either way, you're walking dusty paths now, following a god who doesn't so much teach as disrupt. Where he walks, vines bloom. Where he talks, people start dancing. Where he lingers, well, nobody remembers that part clearly, but they're smiling. You hear the story of the Tyrrhenian pirates, because every wine-soaked journey needs a sea chase. These guys, classic jerks with boats, spot a beautiful youth on the shore. A spoiler, it's Dionysus in disguise, and think, let's kidnap him and sell him. Not their brightest moment. They tie him up. He smiles politely. They start rowing. Then the ropes fall off. The mast blooms into a grapevine. Ivy crawls over the hull. Wild music fills the air. One guy screams something about lions, and suddenly, every pirate, not named the helmsman, leaps into the sea and turns into a dolphin. True story? Well, depending on your definition of true. The helmsman, by the way, gets a pass. Dionysus liked his vibe. You pause at a fishing village where old men still claim their ancestors were those dolphins. They say the god left a gift here once. Maybe a jug that never runs dry, or a song that drives out storms. They don't really remember, because, well, it's Dionysus. The past gets fuzzy around him. Further inland, you follow tales of Dionysus, teaching mortals the secret of the vine. He doesn't write books. He just hands you a cluster of grapes and lets you figure it out. If you squeeze it wrong, you get juice. If you wait long enough, you get something sacred, or dangerous, or both. This is how Dionysus spreads, not through conquest, but through curiosity. He's not Alexander the Great. He's your strange art teacher with a ukulele and a barrel of something suspicious in the corner. And yet, his impact is just as wide. You stop at a town where the people build a little shrine out of broken amphorae and seashells. They say Dionysus stopped here once and turned the river into wine for a whole evening. It didn't go well for the fish, but the poetry was incredible. There's something else everywhere he goes. He gathers followers. Not warriors, not priests. Just people who want to feel alive. His entourage is part street theater, part commune, part mobile vineyard. They're satyrs, half goat party gremlins. They're maenads, women who've tossed society's rulebook into the bonfire. They're travelers like you, who heard the music and followed, and as you walk with them, something shifts in you. The rules you learned, about how to behave, what to fear, who to obey, start to dissolve. Laughter comes easier, so does weeping. And somewhere in between, there's this quiet joy, like you've stepped out of time. That's Dionysus's gift. Not just wine, not just escape, but transformation. One night someone asks if you want to try the ritual. You say yes before you know what it is. They hand you a mask, not a fancy one, just clay and paint, but when you put it on, you're not you anymore. You're a god. Or a beast. Or a feeling with legs. The dance begins. The stars blur. You hear a flute, then your own voice, distant, like it belongs to someone else. And when it's over, you're lying on the grass, heart racing, unsure whether you've been possessed or healed. You open your eyes to the sky. The clouds above look like a stampede of vines, and the air smells faintly of sea mist even though you're nowhere near the ocean. That's the thing about Dionysus. He never really leaves. He just travels further down the road. By now, you've noticed something odd about Dionysus's followers. Besides the whole wearing leaves, shrieking joyfully at the moon thing, they're unstable. Not in the fun way. In the should we be worried way. There's a reason they're called maenads. The name means raving ones. You see one now, dancing barefoot on gravel like it's silk, arms raised to nothing you can see. Her eyes are too wide, too bright. You wonder if she's possessed or just really into the music. The line between ecstasy and madness. Dionysus walks it like a tightrope. This, dear listener, is what scholars call the madness clause. It's in the fine print of worshipping the god of wine, and mayhem deny him, mock him, or try to explain him rationally, and your brain will go the way of a tipped amphora, spilled, shattered, and maybe eaten by squirrels. Take Pentheus, king of Thebes. Yes, that same city Dionysus keeps haunting. Young guy, big ego, not great with metaphor. He hears rumors that Dionysus is back, and his followers are throwing wild forest parties. Naturally, Pentheus bans it all. Not in my city, he says. We're a respectable town. Bad move. Dionysus shows up disguised as a pretty stranger. He loves that trick, and gets arrested. But then, the cell doors melt, the palace starts sprouting vines, and the guards start giggling. Pentheus, increasingly unhinged, demands to see the maenads himself. Dionysus, in full chaos mode, says, "Sure, but you'll need a disguise." Next thing you know, the king of Thebes is trotting into the forest wearing a dress, a wig, and a nervous expression. Historians still argue whether this cross-dressing bit reflects ancient ritual inversion or just mythological trolling at its finest. Either way, it ends badly. The maenads, drunk on wine power and divine frenzy, mistake him for a wild animal. They tear him apart, literally, and leading the charge, his own mother, Agev, eyes wide with madness, clutching what she thinks is a lion's head. Reality doesn't just bend around Dionysus, it dissolves. You hear another tale, told in hushed tones. A group of women refused to join his rites. They stayed behind, spun their wool, and mocked the dancers. So he turned their threads into vines and their minds into mush. They wandered off, shrieking, some say never to return. Is he cruel? No, at least not in the lightning bolt, smite you, for fun way of some other gods. Dionysus doesn't punish. He undoes. He doesn't rage. He reveals. He takes your boundaries, your pride, your carefully combed hair, and he rips it all away. And what's left? Maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's madness. Maybe it's the same thing. There's this idea floating among scholars that Dionysus is a god of liminality. Thresholds, transitions, the space between sense and nonsense. And you get it now. When you're dancing, laughing, crying, all at once, who are you? Where do you begin and end? You stop at a hilltop where an old priest tells you the myth of the daughters of Minyas. 3 sisters, practical and boring, refused to join the Dionysian rites. So, naturally, they were turned into bats, or birds, or spiders depending on the version. Moral of the story. Don't underestimate a wine god with a flair for irony. And yet, you can't help but notice something beautiful in all this chaos. The maenads, terrifying, yes, also seem free, unburdened, wild in a way that feels almost holy. It's not just about losing control. It's about shedding the self you built to survive in a world that never felt quite real anyway. You watch a procession pass by, torches, singing, bodies swaying like reeds in wind. A boy offers you a cup. You hesitate. He says, "Don't worry. It's just water. For now." And he winks. You drink. The stars shimmer. The ground hums. Somewhere in the dark you hear a flute, and you understand. Madness isn't always the absence of reason. Sometimes it's the overflow of truth too big to fit in your head. You've barely shaken the dizziness from last night's rite when you stumble into something unexpected theater. No, not the ancient version of Netflix, but the real, raw origin of storytelling performed under the sky. backed by drums and wine-fueled nerves. Turns out, Dionysus isn't just about drunken chaos and questionable decisions. He's also the accidental inventor of drama. Which makes sense. The guy lives for flair. You find yourself in Athens during the city's great spring festival. The Dionysia. It's not just a party, it's a sacred event. Citizens gather in droves, piling into a massive stone amphitheater carved into a hillside. There's laughter, arguments, fig snacks, and that unmistakable show hush as the chorus lines up, masked and ready. Here's the wild part: this whole scene started because someone thought, what if we took those Maynard Forest raves and gave them a plot? That someone may have been Thespis, who steps onto the stage, speaks solo lines, and inadvertently creates acting. Historians still argue whether Thespis truly was the first, or if his name just stuck because it's conveniently punny. Hence, thespian, your new favorite SAT word. Either way, Dionysus is credited with spawning not just parties, but performance art. You sit on a sun-warmed stone bench as the play begins. It's a tragedy, of course. Someone noble is about to die poetically. You watch masked actors declaim lines about pride, betrayal, fate, universal themes. But framed through myth, you glance at the statue of Dionysus watching over the stage. His smile is ambiguous, like he's in on the ending. And suddenly, it clicks. Dionysus doesn't just throw parties for the chaos. He knows that through ritual, through storytelling, through theater, people can experience emotional catharsis. You laugh, cry, scream, not because you're insane, but because for a moment, you're free from the masks you wear every day. The chorus sings. Their lines spiral into a frenzy of lamentation. You notice their movements mirror the Maenads. Deliberate, hypnotic, wild. This isn't just art, it's worship. Dionysus isn't off in some temple demanding offerings. He's right here, in the script, in the tension, in the applause. Later in the Agora, you overhear philosophers debating. Is theater corrupting our youth? Does it weaken the moral fiber? Should we make the mask smaller? The usual, but the people, they love it. And so does Dionysus. Because in every scene, every dramatic gesture, every tragic fall, he sees humanity reaching for something bigger. Backstage, it's a mess of sweat, flutes, and costume malfunctions. One actor insists he saw the god himself peeking in from the wings. Another swears her script changed mid-show. You suspect wine was involved. You spend the night beneath the stars, head full of poetry and powdered lead makeup. You dream in strophe and antistrophe, caught in a chorus of metaphors. And when you wake, someone's quoting Euripides, whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. You smile. Classic Dionysus move. Because madness, theater, and transformation, they're all parts of the same script. One you're now performing, whether you meant to or not. You're still humming yesterday's chorus lines when you find yourself on a beach that doesn't quite belong to this world. The sand is too white, the sky too violet, and there's a breeze that smells like honey and heartbreak. You're on Naxos now, an island where myths tend to end badly for mortals and suspiciously well for gods. And speaking of suspiciously well, there she is, Ariadne. You know her from other stories: Theseus, the labyrinth, the Minotaur, the whole help me escape the maze, then get dumped on an island fiasco. Poor girl gives a guy a ball of thread, and what does she get? Ghosted. In sandals. She's sitting by the waves, crown askew, eyes red from crying or salt or both. You consider offering her a fig, but before you can move, the air changes. A gentle, wine-scented wind rolls in, and just like that, Dionysus appears. No thunder, no grand entrance. Just a shimmer in the corner of your eye, and suddenly he's walking toward her like it's the most normal thing in the world. Hair tousled, eyes shining, carrying what might be a bouquet or might be a bunch of grapes on a stick. Classic Dionysus. He doesn't rescue her. That's not his style. He doesn't need to. Ariadne looks up, sees him, and something shifts. Maybe it's the madness again, or maybe it's the relief of being seen by someone who isn't pretending not to be weird. They say Dionysus married her right there on that beach. No priests, no paperwork. Just a crown of stars and the kind of kiss that turns time into taffy. The gods liked her too, especially after Dionysus gave her a celestial wedding gift, a diadem so sparkly it became a constellation. Corona Borealis, you can still see it on clear nights. Historians still argue whether this union was about redemption, divinity, or just a convenient way to explain an unusually glittery star pattern. But as you watch them laughing barefoot in the surf, it feels less like mythology and more like the universe apologizing to someone who deserved better. The Maenads aren't far. Neither are the satyrs. You think someone's playing a panpipe with their nose. It's hard to be sure. But there's a peace here you haven't felt since... well, ever. The kind that happens when grief meets joy and neither tries to cancel the other out. Ariane, no longer abandoned. Dionysus, momentarily still. And you realize something, even gods need someone to sit with after the music fades. Someone who knows the feeling of being left behind and the miracle of being found again. As twilight pools in the horizon, the beach party swells. Torches light, wine flows, the stars blink like paparazzi. And in the center, dancing together under a sky with no judgment, is a mortal made immortal and a god who never fit the mold. You join in, feet unsure, heart unsteady. A satyr offers you a shell cup. You accept. It tastes like hibiscus and second chances. That's the Dionysian way. Tragedy turned sideways. Loss looped into celebration. The end of one myth becoming the middle of another. And for one sweet, impossible night, everything makes sense. The island fades behind you like a half-remembered lyric, and soon you're deep inland again, somewhere between myth and pasture. The forest here is alive, not just with birds and breezes, but with laughter. Snorts, giggles, little shrieks that sound like someone lost a bet. You're in satyr country now. Good luck getting out clean. Dionysus, naturally, is at the center of it all. Reclined on a mossy rock like a slightly drunk philosopher, he's surrounded by creatures who embody every awkward teenage impulse you've ever suppressed. Satyrs, half man, half goat, all chaos. They bounce around with cloven feet, fuzzy legs, and little tails that wag when they laugh, which is constantly. Their idea of conversation includes flute solos, off-key singing, and competitive grape stomping. You're invited to judge. One satyr presents his technique with theatrical flair. Another just kind of belly flops into the vat. You give points for enthusiasm. The wine flows freely, as always. But this time there's a soundtrack, pipes, tambourines, and something that might be a turtle shell with strings. You're not entirely sure, and neither is the guy playing it. He calls it a donkey lyre, and he's very proud. The Maenads join in, whirling and shrieking, faces painted with berry juice and a touch of divine insanity. You notice one is leading a goat on a leash made of ivy. You ask why. She grins and says, "He's the judge of the dance-off." You don't ask further. But not everything here is just frolics and flutes. In the midst of this muddy symphony, you find something oddly sincere. A satyr sits beside you, panting, sipping water like it's sacramental. He says Dionysus found him weeping once, curled in a tree root, paralyzed by the world's expectations. He told me to dance badly until I got good, he says. Then he told me to stop trying to get good. That's the secret here. Dionysus doesn't care if you're polished. He wants you wild, unfiltered, authentic in the way toddlers and thunderstorms are authentic. This isn't a performance. It's a release. You learn of the rustic gods who often tag along. Pan, god of the wild, with his eerie flute that supposedly drove people mad if they heard it at the wrong moment. Historians still argue whether that flute was metaphorical or just really, really bad. There's Silenus, Dionysus' old, drunken tutor, who claims he's seen the end of the world and wasn't impressed. And in the middle of it, all is Dionysus, laughing harder than anyone, wearing a crown made of daisies and grape leaves, trading riddles with a donkey. It's easy to forget, watching this circus of joy and absurdity, that this god is also fearsome. He can shatter minds, undo cities, break reality. But today, he's spinning in circles arm in arm with a satyr and a maenad, singing a song with no words. Later, as the revelers nap in a pile like contented cats, you ask Dionysus what it all means. He smiles without opening his eyes. Nothing. Do you like it? You nod. Then it means that. You wake to find ivy growing around your ankles. It's gentle, not threatening, just a reminder that time moves strangely in Dionysus's world. You shake it off, literally, and follow the satyrs down a winding path that smells like pomegranate and mischief. Turns out there's been a summons. Dionysus is going to Olympus. Now, you'd think the home of the gods would be nothing but polished marble and golden sunsets. And it is. If your idea of paradise includes passive, aggressive immortals with thunder issues and suspiciously perfect skin, Dionysus hasn't been invited so much as tolerated. He's the new kid in a toga, the one who doesn't fit the Olympian mold. But you follow him anyway, through drifting cloud corridors and dramatic lightning backdrops. The elevator music up the mountain, wildly underwhelming. At the gates of Olympus, Hermes smirks and opens the door. They're not gonna like your entrance, he whispers. Dionysus just winks and steps inside with a full entourage of satyrs. The maenads, a couple of panthers, and a guy carrying a portable fountain that only dispenses rosé. Hera rolls her eyes, so hard they echo. Apollo stops tuning his lyre mid-chord. Even Athena adjusts her helmet, just in case this turns into a lecture. And Zeus. He grins like a dad who's both proud and confused by his son's TikTok. You find a spot near the buffet table, nervously eyeing a fruit platter that seems to be pulsing with ambient divinity. Dionysus stands in the center of the room, arms open, wine cup already refilled. He's not here to prove anything. That's the thing, he just is. And slowly, grudgingly, the gods acknowledge it. He's one of them now. It wasn't always a sure thing. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was a late addition to the 12 Olympians, or if he was always meant to ascend. But what matters is this: he changed Olympus. Brought madness, yes, but also joy. He's not war or wisdom or weather. He's experience. He's emotion. He's the reason gods sometimes throw parties instead of thunderbolts. He passes out drinks. Tells a joke that makes Demeter snort. Hades, who absolutely wasn't going to show up, sends a shadow clone just to listen. Even Ares cracks a smile, though he immediately denies it. And then, as the music swells, Dionysus does something unthinkable. He invites mortals in. You watch, stunned, as regular people, dancers, actors, lost lovers, grape farmers, stumble into Olympus, blinking in the divine light, clutching their dreams. And the gods, they don't smite anyone, they just scoot over. A maenad twirls into the hall. A satyr makes a toast. Someone spills nectar on a sacred scroll. No one cares. The walls of Olympus don't crack. They breathe. Later, around a celestial bonfire, you sit beside Artemis, who mutters, "He's unpredictable." But I like his honesty. Aphrodite hums and twirls a curl, and he brings the best wine. By dawn, Dionysus is curled up with a panther, snoring softly, crown askew. The gods pretend not to be charmed. But they are, and so are you. Because in a realm built on power, it's the god of feeling who finally makes everyone human. You leave Olympus with the peculiar sensation of having attended both the divine board meeting and the after party. The gods waved you off with varying levels of eye contact, and now you're back on Earth. But Dionysus isn't. Not fully. He's experimenting. This is his phase of disguises and shenanigans. You spot him first in a village square, disguised as a girl selling figs. Nobody notices at first. Why would they? But then he starts handing out the juiciest, weirdest tasting fruit anyone's ever had. People start singing. Two strangers fall in love. A pig learns to dance. Dionysus winks at you and vanishes before anyone can ask for a receipt. Later, you hear he showed up in Thessaly as an old man carrying a wineskin that never empties. Villagers laughed until they realized they hadn't stopped laughing in 3 days. Then he vanished into a vine-covered outhouse. Then he's a goat? Yes, a literal goat. Or maybe just someone pretending to be a goat very convincingly. You're not sure. But the goat leads a parade of children through town, and when it disappears, there's a vineyard growing where none had been before. Classic. You're beginning to understand. Dionysus doesn't stay anywhere. He slips through identities like masks in a play. Young man, old woman, musician, trickster, divine prankster with a soft spot for underdogs and people who dance when no one's watching. And with each appearance, something changes. A town that had grown rigid and dull suddenly bursts into color. A miser opens his wine cellar to strangers. A priest recites poetry with tears in his eyes. And just when things are about to tip into madness, when people start chanting, singing, tearing down social norms, he vanishes. Gone. Like sea mist. Historians still argue whether Dionysus's shape shifting reflects ancient rituals of gender and identity, or if he's just the godly version of that one friend who's always in a different outfit and somehow knows everyone at the party. Either way, he doesn't fit in boxes, or temples, or gender norms. He passed through a village where he'd been only days before. The elders are still debating what happened. One swears Dionysus turned into a she-wolf and led the village women on a hunt. Another says he disguised himself as a mute and made the town's mayor recite all his regrets in iambic pentameter. A third just nods solemnly and offers you a raisin. None of them agree, but they all smile, because things are better now. Looser. Levelier. A little weird. Sure, but livable. And isn't that the whole point? You find his latest trace near a river. Someone's left behind a robe, a broken flute, and a full cup of wine floating upriver. You sip it. It tastes like apples, thunder, and secrets you'll never tell. Then you laugh. Because somewhere, dressed as a boy or a girl or a breeze, Dionysus is watching. Changing the world, one disappearing act at a time. You're in Thebes again, or rather Thebes is in you. That dusty, defiant city keeps pulling Dionysus back like a thorn in his vine, stained side. It's where he was born. Or not, depending on which poet you ask. Either way, it's where his mother Semele died, and that kind of origin doesn't let go easy. Thebes has a reputation proud, structured, full of guys who iron their tunics and say things like, "Order is sacred," which, of course, makes it Dionysus's favorite place to stir the metaphorical pot. And tonight's the night it boils over. You wander through streets that smell like stone and suspicion. Thebes has outlawed Dionysian rites again. Apparently, the city elders weren't fans of last time's goat parade and spontaneous nudity. Now they've tightened the rules. No wine, no dancing, no divine funk allowed, which means, of course, Dionysus is about to throw the ultimate comeback tour. He arrives in disguise, because of course he does. This time, he's a foreign prophet with the kind of eyes that know too much and the kind of voice that makes logic feel unnecessary. He starts whispering to the women, not seduction, invitation to dance, to sing, to feel. And just like that, the Maenads return. They flee to the mountains, wreaths in their hair, torches in hand. The men roll their eyes. Hysteria, they mutter. It'll pass, but it doesn't. It builds. The city's new king, Pentheus, yes, we met him before, has already declared Dionysus a fraud. This time, he means to arrest him. The prophet is brought in chains, smirking. Everyone at court feels off, the vines creeping in through the window. Probably just decor. Pentheus scoffs. You've bewitched the women. You think you're a god? And Dionysus, smiling like he knows how this story ends, says softly, "Would you like to see them yourself?" Cue a costume change. Soon enough, Pentheus is tiptoeing up the mountainside, wearing a dress and an anxious scowl. The god leads him, murmuring encouragement, planting ideas. "You'll see the truth," he says. "But not with your eyes." The scene on the slope is surreal. The Maenads are deep in trance, swirling, shouting, eyes blazing with divine madness. Pentheus hides behind a tree, peeking, fascinated and terrified. And then the god whispers, "Step closer." He does. The Maenads see him, but not as Pentheus, not as king. They see a threat, a lion, a monster. What happens next isn't poetic, it's raw. They tear him apart, limbs flung like ritual offerings. And leading them, eyes wild, voice triumphant, is his own mother, Agev. She cradles his head in her arms like a prize, smiling until the spell breaks and horror floods in. Thebes wakes the next morning to silence. No revels, no laughter, just the weight of realization. Dionysus returns, fully divine now, no more disguises. He doesn't scream or gloat. He simply stands in the wreckage and says, "I warned you." The city crumbles around its pride. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant to warn against hubris or celebrate the god's power. But you're not thinking of moral lessons. You're thinking about how Dionysus never asks for worship, only recognition. Ignore him, suppress him, lock away the wild parts of yourself, and he'll return as something darker. That night, as you leave Thebes, you hear singing, quiet but firm. Someone's lighting a torch in the hills again. The god is gone, but never far. Thebes learned that the hard way, and you're learning it too. You're miles from Thebes now, stumbling along a road that doesn't seem to lead anywhere. And yet, you're definitely headed somewhere. The sky pulses with twilight. The scent of crushed rosemary and oil drifts in the air, and off in the distance, singing, rough, rhythmic, slightly off-key, which can only mean one thing, soldiers. But they're not marching, they're partying. You crest the hill and see a military camp in full Dionysian bloom. Helmets discarded, shields turned into makeshift drums, spear tips draped in ribbons. This isn't a battlefield, it's a karaoke night gone feral. Dionysus has arrived at war. This is where things get complicated. He's not a war god, not in the Ares sense. But make no mistake, Dionysus knows how to wage a different kind of conquest. One that doesn't smash gates but melts them. Not with force, but with wine, confusion, and euphoria. You descend into the camp and find soldiers laughing, crying, embracing enemies like long-lost siblings. One guy's wearing a breastplate and nothing else. Another is slow, dancing with his horse. And in the center of it all, Dionysus reclines on a crate of amphorae, conducting the madness like a maestro with a grapevine baton. You hear how he once approached a besieged city, not with an army, but with a procession. Flutes, torches, maenads. The walls fell, not from catapults, but from the inside, because the defenders joined the party. No resistance, just revelry. Historians still argue whether that city was historical or symbolic. You stop caring. The wine here is excellent. Later, a general explains through slurred wisdom. He turns your sword into a ladle. You forget who you're mad at. That's the power. Then he vomits into his helmet. You find yourself drawn into the rites. This one's tamer than the others. No dismemberment, fewer spontaneous goat-based performances. Just soldiers singing old hymns with their arms around each other. A girl with wine-stained hands teaches you a chant. It's ancient, rhythmic nonsense. It makes you cry. Dionysus sees you weeping and raises an eyebrow. "War's ugly," he says. "So I made a god for what comes after." And that hits you. Because this isn't just about reveling. It's about healing. Dionysus is the god who steps in when everything else breaks. When reason snaps. When order fails. When all the logic in the world can't fix what's been lost. He brings madness. But he also brings balm. You remember hearing that he fought in India once. That he brought his rights all the way to the farthest edge of the world. That he turned rivers into wine and soldiers into dancers. But the texts are vague. Some say it's metaphor. Others say he simply wandered so far east that even the myths stopped keeping track. Tonight, though, you believe every word. Because around this campfire, warriors don't look like killers. They look like boys with bruised hearts, finding peace in rhythm and ritual. And Dionysus, leaning back, eyes half closed, look satisfied. He didn't end war, but he made something human grow from its ashes. The wine runs out just before dawn. Everyone falls asleep in strange positions. A soldier's armor snores softly beside you. And when you wake, Dionysus is gone again. Just missed in the morning. You're climbing now, up slopes, where the air gets thin, and the paths forget how to be paths. The mountain is steep, tangled with wild herbs and half-remembered stories. Locals call it Nysa, or maybe it's just a Nasa. There are dozens of contenders. No one agrees where it is, but everyone agrees on what happened there. This is where Dionysus learned his first magic, fermentation. You find the clearing by accident. One moment you're arguing with a goat about trail etiquette. The next, you're standing in a sunlit grove that smells like earth, sweetness, and distant thunder. Vines curl around everything. Trees, stones, your ankles if you linger too long. In the center, a weathered altar, carved with symbols you half recognize. Grapes, ivy, a face split between laughter and terror. You sit, you listen, and slowly, the mountain begins to whisper. They say Dionysus was raised here, hidden from Hera's wrath by nymphs, caretakers of chaos and cradle. The place pulses with old joy. The trees feel like they've seen too much and found it hilarious. And here, in this sanctuary of sap and song, the god-child discovered something no one else had. How to wait? Because that's the secret to wine, isn't it? Time. You pick a grape, and it's just juice. But you let it rest, let it transform, then you have something sacred. Dionysus didn't just invent intoxication. He invented patience, anticipation, the art of letting something wild become something divine. You find an old clay vat, long dry, but the stone around it is stained purple. Someone left a cluster of shriveled grapes in a bowl beside it. A prayer offering, or a snack, you take one. It tastes like sun and dust and slow miracles. The myths say the nymphs taught him the ways of the vine, or maybe he taught them. Or maybe the knowledge was already in the mountain, and he just listened better than anyone else. You lie back and let the canopy shift above you. Birds call. A breeze brushes your face like an old friend. This isn't just where Dionysus learned to make wine. This is where he became wine. Not liquid, but idea. The god of fermentation, of transformation, of time turned inside out. The nymphs are still here, you think. Or at least their presence is. You hear giggles in the leaves. A splash in a stream. A lullaby hummed in a key you can't name. Everything here moves slowly. Softly. But it moves. You think of the other gods, so immediate, so forceful. Lightning bolts. Ocean waves. But Dionysus, he waits. He ferments. Historians still argue whether Nysa is symbolic or geographical, whether it's a real place or just a metaphor for divine childhood. But as you watch a vine curl itself into the shape of a question mark, you realize it doesn't matter. This is the origin not of a god but of a process. Joy, fear, loss, love, fermented in the soul until they become something drinkable. Potent, honest. You close your eyes and let the mountain hum its lullaby. And somewhere, deeper than roots, the first wine still ferments. You descend from Mount Nysa changed. Not in the flashy glow, in the dark divine way. But deeper, subtler, like your blood has picked up a rhythm it didn't have before. You follow that rhythm through sunlit fields and dusty paths until you hear it. A low rumble, the sound of paws and wheels and laughter barely contained. And then it comes into view. Dionysus's chariot. Not just any chariot. This one is a rolling theater, a carnival on wheels pulled by panthers. Real ones. You're not sure how he trained them, or if he did. Maybe they just showed up. With Dionysus, reality's grip is always a little slippy. The chariot gleams, overgrown with ivy and decorated with masks, pine cones, and random sparkly things that make no sense but look fabulous. Dionysus lounges at the helm, one leg thrown over the side, casually feeding a panther what might be a fig or someone's hat. He sees you and grins like a magician who just pulled a rabbit out of a dimension. You're waved aboard without question. No tickets, no rules, just vibes. The satyrs cheer. Maenads dance. Someone hands you a goblet shaped like a laughing face. You're pretty sure the goblet is laughing too. The chariot lurches forward, not in a gallop, but a groove. It doesn't travel on roads. It makes its own. Through forests, across rivers, into villages that weren't on any map until 5 minutes ago. Wherever it goes, people pour out of homes, barns, caves. They cheer, they join, they forget what they were doing. And the music! Pipes, drums, clapping, shouting. Dionysus doesn't lead with commands. He leads with tempo. The whole thing moves like a song that got tired of being played and decided to drive itself around Greece. You learn fast, the chariot isn't about speed. It's about presence. It's a rolling celebration, a manifestation of divine chaos on wheels with cats that roar and purr in the same breath. You pass through a city and watch it dissolve into dance behind you. People abandon chores, arguments, even court cases to join the parade. A judge throws off his robes and juggles olives. A merchant gives away all his figs and bursts into song. A statue of Athena politely turns away, but not everyone's thrilled. In one town, the elders block the road. No revels, they say. We value decorum. Dionysus smiles gently, waves his tharsis, his pine cone, topped staff, and the vines bloom from the cobblestones. The elders try to hold back the music. The music plays through them. The chariot moves on. The town breathes again. You ride for what feels like days or hours or dreams. At some point, you nap beneath a curtain of grape leaves. When you wake, someone's painted your face with swirls. You don't mind. Historians still argue whether the chariot symbolizes Dionysus's foreignness, his wild arrival from lands unknown, or whether it's just an ancient metaphor for how joy refuses to stay in one place. But when you're on it, you know the truth, it's freedom. Feral, fragrant, feline freedom. As the chariot crests a hill, the wind picks up. You glimpse the sea beyond, glittering like spilled amphorae. Dionysus stands, arms wide, cloak flapping. The world cheers back. The road melts into mist. The wheels of Dionysus's chariot slow, and the panthers begin to purr instead of growl. You're no longer sure what day it is, or what country. The land has shifted into something too soft for maps, too fluid for borders. And up ahead, the sea. Not just any sea, but a silver expanse smudged with fog, lit by a moon that doesn't seem entirely committed to staying in the sky. This is where the stories thin out, where even the myths trail off into whispers. Dionysus has brought you to the end of the known world, where reality gives up and mystery takes over. He dismounts. The chariot vanishes. Just pop, like it was never real. The panthers pad off into the dunes. One looks back and winks. You're left barefoot on damp sand, the breeze tickling your cheeks like ghost fingers. Dionysus walks toward the surf. You follow. Of course you follow. He stops where the water kisses the land. Doesn't speak. Just stares out, cloak fluttering like seaweed in a breeze made of wine and memory. This is the part people don't talk about. The exit. After all the chaos, after the theater, the rites, the madness, the ecstasy, Dionysus doesn't die, doesn't fight, doesn't ascend in a blaze of divinity. He leaves. He fades. The myths say he disappeared into the sea mist, vanishing off the coast of India or somewhere farther still. Historians still argue whether this India is literal, symbolic, or just another poetic shrug from a people who didn't believe in endings. Some say he was last seen walking on the waves. Others claim he dove into the surf and became part of the tide. A few swear he simply blinked out of existence mid-laugh. But here's what you see. He turns to you one last time. His expression is unreadable. Not sad, not joyous, just complete. He lifts his tharsis, touches it to your chest, not with force, but with blessing. You feel warmth, not heat, not fire, just warmth. The kind that stays, and then the mist swallows him. No farewell, no thunderclap, just gone. You stand there for a long while, maybe hours. Maybe the tide circles your ankles 100 times. Maybe the moon shifts positions out of boredom. Eventually, you walk away. You pass through villages where people still pour wine into the dirt as thanks. through theaters where masks smile and mourn, through parties where someone toasts to madness, and nobody asks why. He's gone, but not gone, because Dionysus isn't a figure, he's a feeling. A moment between breaths, a laugh between sobs, a ripple in the glass before you take that first sip. He walked into the mist and left the world vibrating. And maybe, just maybe, he's waiting out there, on another shore, behind another fog, ready to return when we need him most. You're back where it all began, sort of. The hills are quieter now, the vines less eager to whisper. But the scent of crushed grapes still lingers in the soil, and the wind still knows your name. It's not that Dionysus is gone, it's that he's everywhere now. You walk through a village where the wine is poured not from jugs, but from gleaming bottles labeled with ancient echoes. The names Bacchus Reserve, Nasa Blend, Panther's Kiss. He's on the Logos, grinning, crown of ivy intact. The locals don't know the full myths, but they smile when they drink. That's enough. A frat house throws a party. Plastic cups, neon lights. Someone dressed as a satyr with a Bluetooth speaker. They have no idea they're invoking him. But they are. Every time a song makes someone cry, laugh. Every time someone dares to dance like no one's watching, he's there. You wander through a theater next. A school production of the Bacchae. The kids stumble over the lines, masks too big, emotions too raw. But the chorus nails it. When they chant to Dionysus, it's like a ripple of something ancient stirs under the stage. A parent in the front row tears up. Another rolls their eyes. Perfect. Then there's the art, the museums, the vases, the statues frozen mid-revel. The graffiti of vine-covered faces sprayed across city walls. Historians write long papers about cults, rites, and ecstatic worship. But you've seen the truth firsthand. It's not about decoding. It's about feeling. You even pass a wellness retreat. A woman in yoga pants leads a group through wine-assisted mindfulness. There's a singing bowl, a vision board. Someone mentions reclaiming divine femininity through fermentation. You don't laugh, not really. Because even here, through filtered water and filtered lenses, he's working. He doesn't need temples. He has kitchens, basements, college campuses, crowded sidewalks at sunset. Anywhere someone dares to drop the act, raise a glass, and taste something honest. You find a quiet field, sit down, and let it all settle. The gods are still out there. Zeus with his thunder, Athena with her strategies, Apollo with his perfect playlists. But Dionysus, he's humming through every spontaneous song, every glass too full, every laugh that ends in tears, and back again. You close your eyes and think of that first night, of the fig cellar, the forest dancers, the satyrs and their flute solos, of Ariadne in the surf, of a chariot pulled by cats, of sea mist and vanishing gods, and you smile, because he's still pouring. Right now, someone's uncorking a bottle and not knowing why they feel brave. Right now, someone's trying theater for the first time and not knowing why it feels sacred. Right now, someone's dancing like they're made of joy and thunder, and Dionysus, he's laughing softly, pouring another round. So now, the journey winds down, not with a crash, but with a quiet turning inward. The vines have curled back into the earth, the satyrs are asleep, and the last flute note has faded into the hush of a distant breeze. You followed a god of contradictions, wild yet gentle, joyful yet dangerous, human yet divine. You've danced and wept and watched cities bloom and break beneath the weight of joy too big to contain. Now, imagine the world dimming just a little. The edges of your thoughts softening like twilight over a sea. Your breath slows, matching the calm rhythm of an invisible tide. No panthers, no chariots, just the warm press of the present. Remember how it felt, standing barefoot on that shore. The wine mist-wrapping around your shoulders like a lullaby. That's the place you're drifting toward now. Not Thebes, not Olympus. Somewhere older, somewhere inside. The laughter has faded to a hum. The gods are quiet. The stars blink lazily overhead. And you are full, not of answers, but of stories. ones that stretch like vines across memory and meaning. Let your body settle. Let the vines climb gently across your dreams. Let Dionysus disappear into that last exhale, leaving only warmth. Sleep now. He'll return when the world needs music again.